Evening, ladies and gentlemen. We'll call the regular meeting of council Monday, May 8th to order, 7 p.m. Looking for approval of our agenda. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. We do have a presentation with us, so bear with us for a few formalities and then we'll get through to you as well. Public participation. This is an opportunity for members of the public to step forward and make comment to council, and we're eager to hear from you. Mr. Wright?
Good evening, Your Worship. I'm Chris Wright. I reside on Marianne Crescent. If it would please Your Worship, I would like to offer a suggestion about public hearings. At 6 p.m. on March 27th, a public hearing was convened regarding amendments to the Official Community Plan Bylaw 999 and Land Use Bylaw 151. At the commencement of the hearing, Your Worship informed the public that one councillor would be absent due to valid and completely understandable circumstances. The hearing proceeded. Members of the public made statements for the consideration of our council, and the hearing was concluded without the absent member. After a short break, the regularly scheduled council meeting commenced at 7 p.m., and the previously absent councillor was in attendance. During the meeting, voting occurred for bylaws 1665 and 1666, which were directly related to the public hearing held at 6 p.m. The video record of the proceedings of this council clearly shows that the councillor who was absent for the public hearing did indeed vote on these two bylaws. I am left wondering three things. Did this councillor have the opportunity to view the video of the public hearing prior to voting? Did this councillor read the minutes or receive a report of the public hearing prior to voting? Did this councillor in any way consider the input from the public made at the public hearing when voting on bylaws 1665 and 1666? I would like to contrast this with the April 11th council meeting of the City of Vancouver, in which there was voting on a bylaw for which a prior public hearing had been conducted. As two members of their council were not present for that hearing, the mayor asked each of them if they had reviewed the proceedings of the public hearing and whether they would be voting. Each councillor who had not been present for the public hearing stood and responded that they had viewed the video and read the minutes for the hearing, and hence demonstrated to the citizens of Vancouver that they were sufficiently informed to vote. I can only assume that if a Vancouver City Councillor had not been in a position to make such a representation to their mayor, that they would have done the honorable thing and excused themselves from voting. Your Worship, in light of Section 470 of the Local Government Act, I would like to suggest that this chamber may be wise to contemplate adopting an approach similar to that of the City of Vancouver. This might restore the public's confidence that comments made at public hearings are actually being considered by all council members who vote on related bylaws. Thank you.
Any other members of the public? Last and final? Thank you. We shall move on. Mayor's message. I'm going to lead it off with recognition to one of our very own staff. It is Municipal Clerks Week, and our corporate officer is with us this evening. And so on behalf of council, Pat, we couldn't do it without you. You are the official records keeper for the City of Colwood, Freedoms of Information Officer, Election Administrator, and so much more. You maintain official council minutes, ordinance books, and all the records and documents, indexes of official actions of council, overseeing license and permit processes, contracts, agreements, keepers of community history, vital records, and I think just an all-round information source that we would be highly valued. So on behalf of all of us, we would like to just make a quick presentation, please. Another few things. I and many of our council members were in attendance to our emergency preparedness fair that is a joint community event that was held on the weekend at Juan de Fuca West Shore Parks and Rec. I also had the privilege of attending the latest production at Teach-A-Mista Theatre with the students of Royal Bay High School, Urinetown, and it's quite hilarious. It's a musical production and a lot of choreography there that's well worth. It's on this week as well, so very much worth the few dollars to go and attend. Other members of council, anything on your list over the last couple weeks? Councillor Day?
Thank you. Just to let everybody know, I facilitated and attended. They're too small for you to see, but they're my little photos that I got taken at the photo booth at the Balancing Our Minds Youth Mental Health Summit that we held at the Q Center last Thursday. Representatives were there from all 4 school districts, including around something under 500 students were in attendance, and we did a day-long event with speakers with lived experience with mental health, as well as lots of resources were there to inform the kids where to reach out to if and when they needed help. And some great youth ambassadors got up and spoke their truth and reminded kids to stay in touch with their family, to talk to their friends, and no matter what is going on, there's always somebody who wants to hear your story. And it was a very powerful event, and a fabulous venue at the Q Center was the best deal in town. Could have gone anywhere, but we came right here to Colwood, so it was very exciting.
Councillor Martin?
Thank you. Last week I was able to attend for the Greater Victoria Public Library the local emerging authors event. There were 147 books that have now been placed into the library with 113 local authors, published from 2012 to 2016. Several of them are from Colwood, but I also wanted to just make a point of noting out we also have a Colwood staff member who one of his books was picked up. So Ron North, his book is in the collection, and if you're interested in reading it, it's actually, I had a look at it. It looks actually quite good. It's fantasy fiction, and he writes under his own name, so you don't even have to find out a pen name for him.
Anybody else? All right. We'll move on. We have adoption of minutes from the regular meeting of council, April the 24th.
Madam Mayor, if I may suggest that we forward these to the next council meeting. There's just a bit of clarification required on some comments in the minutes, and was not able to make contact with the staff member to be able to confirm those for tonight.
Absolutely. All those in favor of that? Motion carried. Then looking for receipt of a number of sets of minutes. Cycling Advisory, March 6th. Planning and Land Use, April 4th. Planning and Land Use, April 18th. Protective Services, January 18th. And Protective Services, February 15th.
Move receipt, Your Worship.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. And we will now move into our presentations. We have with us this evening council members of the Victoria City Council, Marianne Alto and Pam Madoff. You also are accompanied with a couple of other folks. I have here Randy Joint. And is there anyone else in that
Yes,
group?
I'll make the introductions.
Perfect. Thanks, Pam.
Thank you. Thank you so much for allowing us to make this presentation. Thank you to council and staff, and also to any members of the public who are here this evening. My name is Councillor Pamela Madoff with the City of Victoria, and until recently I was the city representative on the Royal and McPherson Theatre Society. My position has now been taken over by Councillor Marianne Alto, who's with me here this evening, and I'm also joined by Randy Joint, who is the Manager of External Relations, and our past board chair, Byron Smith, as well. So at this point, I'd like to invite Randy up to make the presentation. Councillor Alto will make some closing remarks, and then if there's any questions, we're all here available to answer your questions as well. But again, thank you so much for the opportunity to present to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Madoff. Madam Mayor and Council, I want to echo Pam's thanks for making time for us on your agenda today. So we're here to talk about the region's historic theaters. And our purpose, sorry, that's okay.
There we go.
We're good? Okay. We would like to present some thoughts about the direction of the theaters and hopefully engage you in a conversation about that as we move forward. I want to draw your attention to the quote on the first slide we have here. It's from a woman named Janice Barlow. Janice is one of the foremost theater consultants in North America, and she was in town working with our society a couple of years ago, and she left us with this very nice quote about the state of the theaters and its management. So we wanted to highlight that as we started to speak to you today. Some facts about the theaters. So the McPherson Playhouse was built in 1914. It's a 772-seat theater that's incredibly versatile. The McPherson is great for everything from school productions to TEDx to the most sophisticated touring musical productions. Then there's also the Royal Theatre, built in 1913 at 1,416 seats. The Royal is the largest theatre in the region, and it has been home to some of the most established artists over the last century, from Pavarotti to Baryshnikov. It's great for everything from full-length ballet to we'll see really incredible dance performances, etc. So really well-equipped, beautiful theater. The McPherson Playhouse is owned by the City of Victoria, and its public support comes solely from the City of Victoria. The Royal Theatre is owned by the CRD, and its public support comes from Saanich, Oak Bay, and Victoria. Both theaters are managed by the Royal and McPherson Theatre Society, the organization I work for. We're a not-for-profit and a charitable organization formed in 1998, though it grew out of a previous iteration of the organization that was around since the 70s. The governance model for the society is that we have a council representative from each of Saanich, Oak Bay, and Victoria. And we have 3 to 5 directors that are appointed by the CRD, and we have 5 to 7 directors that are elected by the community at large. And the majority position on our board always rests with the council appointees and the council appointees and the councillors. Okay. So some highlights from the McPherson Playhouse. You can see, I will stop looking up and look down instead. You will see that over 53,000 people attended shows at the McPherson in 2016. It's offered at reduced rates to the community every year. The McPherson is really well suited to be an incubator theater. Many organizations get their start at the McPherson Playhouse. This is true of Pacific Opera Victoria, Dance Victoria, and many others before they move on to the Royal Theatre or onto touring productions. Access is a real key element. Community access is a key element of the McPherson Playhouse, ensuring that it is accessible to organizations that need it. You will see this slide highlights the balance of commercial and not-for-profit use of the McPherson Playhouse every year. You'll note that the majority of its use is from not-for-profit users, clients, though the revenues aren't proportional to the number of use days. So commercial users bring in a greater portion of the revenues towards the operation of the theater than the not-for-profit users do. $95,000 worth of discounts were provided to users in 2016, and you'll see that 8.2% of your residents attended a show at the McPherson Playhouse last year. Royal Theatre also provided at a discount to many user groups throughout the year in 2016. 125,000 people plus attended a show at the Royal Theatre, And this is the home theater of many of our cultural institutions, like the Victoria Symphony Orchestra, Dance Victoria, Pacific Opera, and it does host artists like Katie Lang, etc. every year. Same kind of detail for the commercial not-for-profit breakdown, and you'll see a similar balance in that the commercial clients, though they represent a small portion of the users, represent a greater portion of the revenues for the theater. $301,000 in discounts were provided in 2016, and 15.8% of your residents attended a show at the Royal Theatre last year. So our current state is that the theaters, both the McPherson and the Royal, serve the entire region. Public support has been static since 1998, so those discounts I mentioned become a little more challenging to provide each year. There's a need for performing arts venues in the region. We know that. Organizations are looking for them, and that becomes a really key component of what we do, is providing that access to the organizations that need it. There's a lot of expertise and capacity that is able to be passed on to user groups every year. The management structure is in place for the theaters to operate as a single performing arts center, but the ownership and the funding isn't aligned of the two venues right now. So moving forward, we would love to see that alignment I just mentioned of funding and ownership, so that the region can benefit from having an integrated performing arts center. There would be some real advantages to that model. We'd see the two stages working in concert, so you would be able to steward an artist's or an organization's path along a career evolution from the incubator stage to the main stage. Governance would be simplified if we had alignment, and there would be efficiencies in funding, efficiencies in operations of the two theaters that could be realized through alignment as well. I think I've skipped a slide. Here we go. Okay, at this point, I'm going to welcome up, or ask Councillor Alto to come up and conclude.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. And again, I echo my colleagues' thanks for your time tonight. The reason that we came out to talk with you tonight is to ask you to consider whether or not you'll help us make some decisions about the future of the two theaters. As you've heard, they work really well. I think they really are gems of the region, but there's ways we can make them work better. And this slide just talks to you about what we're hoping will be the next part of our conversation. We've been walking around through all of the different municipalities in the region. This is our fifth one, and we have all of them scheduled to happen over the next 6 weeks or so. And we're really coming out to say, here's some facts about the theaters, here's how they work well, here's where they can be improved, and we really want to ask you whether or not you'll help us look ahead and figure out how to do that work. So we're asking you to consider whether you'll be part of a conversation over the next few months to map out the next steps and what can make these theaters work better. I want to be really clear, we're not asking you tonight for funding, we're not asking you tonight for decisions, we're not asking you tonight to state whether or not you're willing to be part of a final solution. All we're here is asking whether or not you're interested in continuing being part of the conversation for the future. So far, we've had agreement from all of the councils that we've met with to date. And what we'll intend to do in the next few months is, once we've wrapped up our roadshow, as we call it, which will be done by about the middle of June, we'll essentially be collating all of the information that we've heard, all of the responses that we've had, the comments that you've made, the questions that you've asked, and putting that together and coming back to you if you choose to be part of the conversation with us in the future, with a bit of a map about how we can move into the next steps of the conversation. And that will look at some of the things that Randy's talked about. How do we make the governance work better? How do we bring the two theaters together in order to allow them to do more for more folks, either as participants or as audience members? And how do we really make the most of these two theaters in a way which is aligned more efficiently and more structurally in a way that makes us able to work with you and our colleagues around the region in a different way? So tonight, all we're really doing is bringing you some information and leaving you with this question. And the question is, would you like to continue to be part of this conversation? If you do, your colleagues at different municipal councils have either expressed support through a motion or a resolution or just as an opinion. And as I say, if that is your decision tonight, then we'll make sure that you continue to be part of our reporting and that we'll come back to you to ask you to sit with us again, probably in the fall, to look at some specifics around governance, support, and future directions. So we're happy to leave it at that for now, and if you have any questions, we're happy to try and answer them tonight. Alternatively, happy to receive your comments at any time in the future, and really looking tonight for your indication of whether you'd like us to continue to work with you to try and make the theaters work better for the whole region. So I'll leave it at that and see if you have any questions.
Thank you, Council. Any questions? Councillor Day?
Thanks. I'm just wondering, there are, we're a pretty far-flung region, and we do have a brand new theatre at our Royal Bay High School.
Yes.
And there's a number of theatres been created through schools and also partnerships with schools. And have you envisioned reaching out to work with those other venues, including there's a new theatre venue being created at the casino?
It's a great question, and you're not the first council to ask that question. I'll say that when we started this, we hadn't thought of that. We were focused very specifically on the Royal McPherson Theatre Society and what its authority was and how it could be improved. But this is, I think, the third time that the question's been asked, and so I think that we have to include that consideration in where we go from here. And as we, if we come back to you with your choice of being part of this, I think that that's something that we have to consider. Clearly, the authority with the Royal McPherson Theatre Society rests with the theatres. But if it seems like a more efficient and more holistic conversation to start looking at that as a nucleus and then consider the effects of all of the other theatres in the region, I think that's part of the conversation. We didn't start there, for sure.
Thank
we
you.
may end up there.
Any other questions?
I should just say that it's really clear. We have some ideas based on what other theatres have done across the country about where we could go. And I think that Randy and Pam have both talked about the capacities for the future of the theatres. But we don't have an endpoint that's certain. We really do want to come and ask you to work with us and help us. We're not trying to drive you to a particular outcome other than efficiency and ability to build capacity. How we get there is part of this process.
Good. Any further questions? I think you're good.
Great.
I want to thank all of you for coming and making the presentation, though, because it is food for thought, and we need that as a healthy part of community. So,
should I take that as an indication you'd like us to keep talking with you?
yes, go ahead.
Great. All right. So we'll come back to you and take that as an indication that we'll give you the next steps when we find them.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Item number 6.1 on our agenda is a letter that was received, and for matter of record, this will be read out. We normally don't do that, but that had been the ask from the Royal Colwood Golf Course. So it goes as, Dear Madam Mayor Hamilton, on behalf of the Royal Colwood Golf Club, please accept our sincerest apologies for the disturbance we caused our community last evening. It was never our intent to upset our neighbours in such a manner, nor to embarrass the city. We at the Royal Colwood have always taken great pride in being an upstanding member of this wonderful community and the values we all hold most dear. I take full responsibility for the evening's events and regret the unnecessary attention brought upon yourself and the City of Colwood staff. Please convey my apologies to your staff and members of council. Royal Colwood has always valued the long-term relationship we have formed with the City and council, and I hope this won't tarnish our relationship going forward. Sincerely, Philip Nurse. And this was as a result of a private event that was held at the Royal Colwood Golf Course a week or so back. And it was a bit noisy and concerned the neighborhood. And so this has taken great steps forward. And I've heard back from many of those members in that area who have been informed that the letter has been read out this evening. So with that, looking for receipt of the letter.
Move receipt.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Moving into new business, Planning and Land Use Committee, item number 7.1.1, recommendation for DVP application 17-012-4784 Braveheart Lane.
Your Worship, I'll defer to Councillor Day, who chaired the meeting on my behalf last week.
Thank you. I forgot that I was the chair. I referred to us as the replacements. We were a whole group that didn't usually sit together. So, anyways, interesting. The committee received an application to vary Section 5.6.05 of the Land Use Bylaw to relax the minimum average width of a dwelling unit from 7 meters to 5.18 meters, and the minimum combined sum of the side yards from 4.5 meters to 4.4 meters in order to permit the construction of a single-family dwelling. The agent of the applicant explained that they chose the proposed design because there is a 30-foot drop-off at the rear of the property, and they noted that the requested variances will allow the house to be situated closer to the front of the property so it can and will have the same streetscape as those that will be built on the adjacent properties. And there were some members of the community who came out and asked questions, including those from the neighboring street of Drummond Way. They were concerned about the narrow design and whether or not there would be sufficient parking in the neighborhood for the house. And the agent confirmed that they will not be having a secondary suite, so they don't have the additional parking requirement to meet. And the home is approximately 17 feet wide with a single car garage. And the strata roadway, the applicant felt would be sufficient for any additional parking for visitors, etc. There is a statutory right-of-way to the side of the property, and I did confirm with the applicant and staff that it will not be altered. And it was moved, and I would so move, that the development variance permit number DVP 17-012 be authorized for issuance to relax Section 5.6.05 and reduce the minimum average width of the dwelling unit from 7 meters to 5.18 meters, and relax Section 5.6.06 of the same bylaw to reduce the minimum combined sum of the side yards from 4.5 to 4.4, subject to the following conditions. A, that the constructed design and location of the single-family dwelling is substantially compliant with the site plan and the sample elevation drawings attached to the staff report as written. And B, that the finished grade of the proposed single-family dwelling be integrated with the existing grade of the drainage swale indicated on the site plan attached to the staff report, etc., as written before you. And C, that the conditions of DP 07-11 environmental development permit that was issued to authorize the original subdivision and development of this property be upheld with regards to the salvage of western trillium and limitations on vegetation clearing associated with construction. And D, that prior to issuance of a building permit, invasive vegetation will be removed by the property owner and subsequently replaced with plantings native to the coastal Douglas fir ecosystem for the area located within the footprint of the former building envelope as indicated in the drawings attached to the staff report as written before you, on the property located at Lot 4, Section 77, Esquimalt Plan, EPS 719 at 784 Braveheart Lane.
Second.
Any discussion, Council? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Item 7.1.2, recommendation official community plan amendment application, OCP 16002, rezoning application and DVP permit for 3340 Anchorage.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The committee also reviewed a development variance permit application for 3340 Anchorage Avenue. which had been deferred from the February 7th committee meeting for additional information, including what variances to the land use bylaw were being proposed by the applicant. And the Planning Department explained that the applicant is proposing to subdivide an existing corner lot in order to create 2 lots with a site area of 662 square meters each. The applicant will retain the existing one-family dwelling unit and is proposing to construct the house on the newly created lot to passive house standards. The planner confirmed that the application is based on a density of 15 units per hectare, which exceeds the target density of 10 dwelling units per hectare within the hillside shoreline designation. And therefore, the applicant is requesting that the official community plan be amended to change the land use designation to neighborhood, which is based on a target density of 25 to 35 units per hectare. The planner concluded that in addition to an amendment to the current residential R1 zone, which requires a minimum lot area of 695 square meters, in addition to the applicant requesting a variance from the land use bylaw in order to reduce the front setback from 7.5 meters to 2.5 meters along Milburn Drive for the entrance porch and 4 meters for the main structure. The applicant let the committee know that they have taken the adjacent property owners into consideration, so they moved the house closer to the front of the property to preserve their views. And I would add that there was pretty extensive drawing included with the Planning and Land Use Committee's documentation, showing that they have taken into account all the surrounding neighbors' views and are positioning the home such that I don't believe anyone's views of the ocean are going to be directly interfered with. Staff confirmed that the zoning and the OCP amendments are site-specific and will not have any effect on the remainder of the hillside shoreline area. And I guess we'll get right down to the committee moved, and I would so move, that the official community plan amendment and zoning amendment bylaws, including provisions for required contributions to the Community Amenity Fund in the amount of $2,500 per lot, and a contribution to the Affordable Housing Reserve Fund in the amount of $500 per lot, be prepared with implementation to be reviewed by the municipal solicitor such that if and when provisions are made in a registrable development agreement for the following, and there's quite a few, so I won't read them out. It's nuisance mitigation issues. And 2, that the development variance permit be authorized for issuance following adoption of the rezoning bylaw, having the effect of varying the minimum front setback pursuant to section 1026.6 of the land use bylaw number 151 from 7.5 to 2.5 meters for the entrance porch and 4 meters for the main structure on the property described as Lot 6, Section 7, Esquimalt District Plan 9861 at 3340 Anchorage Avenue.
Second.
Any discussion, Council? Councillor Martin?
Thank you. Could you please, through the chair to staff, Councillor Nault, in his comments, basically stated that he opposed the application based on the fact that the proposed lot sizes are significantly lower than the adjacent properties. Can staff just comment on that, please?
Your Worship, there are a wide range of lot sizes in this neighborhood. I would characterize them all as being, in and around the R1 lot minimums, which is 695 square meters for a single family and 1,100 square meters for a duplex. So if you look at Appendix 1 of the staff report that was prepared, you can see what I'm talking about directly adjacent to the property in question at 3340 Anchorage. There are a series of lots that are the same size. But if you look to other areas nearby, there's several lots of less than half the size of the current parcel, and similar in size to what's being proposed for the two new subdivided lots. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Item 7.1.3, memorandum from Deputy Director of Planning, amendment to bylaw number 1668 for the project at 324 Goldstream.
Thank you, Your Worship. The staff report before you outlines two items concerning the rezoning of 324 Goldstream Avenue, which is to allow for the construction of an affordable housing development in association with the wellness center that's under construction currently on site. Firstly, on April 24th, 2017, Council gave second reading to bylaw 1668, which would amend the C8A zone, which is the site of the said housing development. Since this time, staff have worked with the proponents to forward the related subdivision proposal and identified the need to update the map contained within bylaw 1668 to match the sub-area zoning boundaries with the property lines that would be created by the proposed subdivision. Therefore, staff recommend that bylaw number 1668 be amended by replacing its Schedule 2 with the map contained within the staff report. Secondly, staff have also identified the need to exempt 324 Goldstream Avenue from the statutory minimum frontage requirements as per the Local Government Act. This would also be required to facilitate the proposed subdivision of the Panhandle lot that would become the new home of the affordable housing project. I might add that Council has already approved a variance to allow that reduced frontage under our minimum requirements. Thank you.
Move the recommendation, Your Worship.
Any questions, staff? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Moving into protective services, again, Councillor Day, 7.2.1, recommendation in regards to the residents of Millburn Drive and Lagoon, traffic speeding concerns.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. The committee received a few letters from concerned residents in the Millburn Drive and Lagoon Road area who felt that increased traffic volumes and excessive speed were creating a safety hazard. By several I mean many, residents of the area attended the meeting, and some of the comments included that the City of Colwood was promoting the area as a safe place to visit and spend time down at Esquimalt Lagoon, and that vehicles were observed traveling both uphill and downhill at excessive speeds, and that pedestrians, but also property and wildlife were at risk. And quite a few people asked that Council would consider the use of traffic calming methods for the area. Some residents who were present have lived there for as long as 52 years, and they observed that the traffic issues are worst between 6 a.m. and 8:30 a.m. and 4 p.m. and 6:30 p.m. So this is commuting traffic at commuting peak hours. And one of the residents had taken a single day to gather signatures on a petition in the neighborhood asking that Council install speed abatement measures or speed bumps to curb the excess speeds and noise in the area. They requested that they would like to see a greater RCMP presence and suggested things such as painted crosswalks, artwork at the intersections, citing other areas where these have been successful in slowing traffic down and creating a greater sense of community rather than traffic. And Anchorage Avenue was also mentioned as being used as a throughway to reach Ocean Boulevard. I think you're getting the gist of this. One resident did mention that she spoke against the use of installing more stop signs, as she felt that they would most likely be ignored. And they were suggesting that a working committee be formed consisting of area residents, city staff, and police to work towards finding solutions to the problem. And in fact, our RCMP inspector, who was in attendance, said he would be willing to meet with residents to try to help address their concerns. And he did mention also that when calling in to report a situation to the RCMP, it was important that people be prepared to give their name, their address, and their date of birth to the call taker, as this information forms part of the file and helps the police with their enforcement measures. So he mentioned that it was a lot of help to have people willing to follow up once they make a complaint. One of the suggestions at the table was that rather than starting a whole new committee to deal with this issue, it might be more appropriate to deal with it through one of our existing committee structures. So Transportation and Public Infrastructure Committee seemed like a good choice. And it was recommended, and I would so move, that the concerns raised by the Millburn Drive and area residents regarding traffic volumes, speeding, and pedestrian safety be referred to the engineering staff with direction to prepare a report and forward the same to the Transportation and Public Infrastructure Committee for review and discussion.
Second. Discussion. Councillor Logan? Did you have?
No.
Oh, okay.
I do.
Councillor Martin?
So I guess the question I have through the chair to either staff or to Councillor Day is this not more of a policing issue than it is the roads work? I mean, and they have speed limits. It's that the people are not doing what they're supposed to be doing. They're speeding, right, through the neighborhood. Like if we're talking about if it's a volume issue because of rush hour, then that's a significantly different issue than if it is about traffic speed. So I'm trying to understand, is this a volume issue that wants to get addressed because people are now using the lagoon as the thoroughfare to get downtown, or is this a fact that it's just about speed, that the volume is going too fast through the neighborhoods?
Well, I have had a subsequent email from one of the residents down there informing me that it really isn't strictly a rush hour problem, that some of the worst times for the community is actually on the weekends. And it's a matter of one of the letters included a photo of a driveway where it is a completely blind driveway. They can't, if somebody's driving that fast down the road, they're not going to be able to exit their driveway safely while people are driving that quickly. So I think it's a little bit of all of those things. I think it is certainly people shortcutting through a neighborhood and trying to make time in the morning rush hour. But I think it's also a case of an area that has no sidewalks, that it really doesn't have anything to suggest that you shouldn't fly down the road at that speed. There's no visual narrowing. There's no sand traps for your vehicles to get stuck in. If it was my neighborhood, if I lived right there, I certainly would hope that the city would consider doing something to make it less attractive to drive quickly through a residential neighborhood.
Any other comments? Just one to our director here. We do have a plan, I recall, at previous council discussing the Heatherbell Lagoon, Millburn kind of intersection up there where it is undoubtedly, and I know Councillor Trace can attest to the fact that people come up and around that corner without clear visibility of who's around that corner, and same thing coming down. Blind driveways in that vicinity, and I know we had a plan in place, but I just don't know when it was going to be triggered. It's in and around the building out of the Heatherbell development.
Your Worship, there's no staff here that have knowledge of that just because of the turnover. So I think
Yeah.
it's probably best
just-
that we
but
just report it out. In
Our
the
recommendation is to refer back to engineering staff, but just to maybe look at what that piece is, as well as, what we can do in the more short term, because we did hash over those portable speed humps and putting in the warning track kind of.
Well, we'll look into existing traffic studies that have
Yeah.
been done by adjacent developers and existing work that we've done in the past, and it'll all be incorporated in the staff report.
Thank you. Recommendation is before us. You moved and seconded?
I did.
Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Protective Services 7.2.2. Recommendation for CRD animal control summary February through March.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We were reviewing our CRD animal control summary for February and March, and the committee noted that there was, I'm sure you're all very aware of the headlines that were at the lagoon with very unfortunate circumstances where a small dog was attacked by a pit bull and killed. So it brought to mind, when we were reading the report, there was a dog described as a gray pit bull mentioned in both the February and the March dog attacks report synopsis. And we were curious if that was the same dog, or are there multiple dogs that are creating issues in our neighborhood? And so the dog attack report is cumulative, and it includes whenever a dog is reported or a dog attack is reported, it is in those statistics. And we were looking to see whether or not enforcement is being stepped up in those areas where dog attacks are occurring. And I don't have that answer yet. We will have that answer at our next meeting. But a discussion ensued about the requirements for dogs to be on leash, our off-leash areas, and our sign placement, with some concern with regards to dogs that are perhaps on the outside of the lagoon, crossing over into the interior of the lagoon where they're supposed to be on leash, and whether or not we needed to have a review of the animal control signage along the Esquimalt Lagoon, and consideration of referring the matter to the Parks, Recreation and Culture Committee for some further investigation, including for all of Colwood Parks, to look at the requirement for effective control or leashing of dogs, because it does seem that there's more and more showing up in the statistics. So it was moved by the committee, and I would so move, that the issue of signage and dog leash requirements at Esquimalt Lagoon and other Colwood Parks be referred to the Parks, Recreation and Culture Committee for further review and discussion.
Any discussion, comments? Just that I would add to it, the CRD is undertaking a real restriction on dogs in their CRD parks, and I do have a concern that it will have a trickle-down effect in regards to municipal parks that have a wider range. I'm sure that we didn't have it as an intention for the entire region to come into the dog parks or dog areas and run free. Just this weekend on Sunday, I came across there, and there were 3 off-leash dogs on the inside sector of the lagoon running up and down, which is the bird sanctuary designated location. So I think it is a problem that we need to be looking to address and getting some more information on, for sure. Councillor Martin.
Thank you. I spoke to staff just before the meeting started too, and I guess I just would want to reinforce that we are also working with our communications officer to make sure that the signage is also meeting what we dictated by council previously around positive signage versus, or verbiage, excuse me, versus negative verbiage. And so that if this is being referred to the Parks Department, that they're also working in conjunction with our communications.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Moving into Finance and Administration report in regards to the Crest Emergency Communications Annual General Meeting and a need to appoint.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Capital Region Emergency Services Telecommunications Organization, which is better known as CREST, is required under the Business Corporations Act to hold an annual general meeting every year, and the city is one of the member shareholders. Pursuant to the articles of the company, the city, which is a shareholder, as I've just said, may authorize whomever it thinks is fit to act as the city's shareholder representative at the annual general meeting. The meeting is intended to have our representative vote on various items that affect the company. Such things that they've listed in their notice is receiving financial statements, their annual report, appointing their auditors, setting the number of directors for the ensuing year, electing directors to hold office until the close of the next annual general meeting, and transacting such other business as may come before the meeting. So council has two options before them with respect to whom they should appoint to represent as a shareholder. They can choose a member of council who is not the board member, the council board member currently serving on CREST, which is Councillor Gordy Logan. So another member of council would be selected to attend the meeting and vote on behalf of the city based on the information I've just read from the notice. Alternatively, if council doesn't want to choose another member of council to attend CREST on their behalf, to act and vote on their behalf, they could choose to use their proxy and issue it to the board member, who would then attend the annual general meeting and represent the shareholders' interests. So there are no financial implications associated with this appointment. It's just up to council to determine if they'd like to issue the proxy to the board director or have another member of council represent council's interests.
Council?
Thank you, Worship. I will say it was a bit awkward last year as the chair of the board for CREST. I was the only director that declared a conflict as a result of the screwy Schlenker decision, as was advised by staff last year, and the rest of the board was appointed as the shareholders' representative. So I just want to be clear that as a board representative, my fiduciary responsibility is to the corporation, but as a shareholder, it's a totally different ballgame, and my fiduciary responsibility is to the city and the taxpayer. So there is a line, and Councillor Trace represented the city as the shareholder last year, and I'm sure it was a stimulating experience for her. I have to say it's pretty dry and pretty standard. So I appreciate staff coming up with the option of extending their proxy to me if that was council's desire. Thank you.
Need a recommendation?
Madam Mayor, if council would like to have a representative from council there, I'm actually already there in the afternoon for the Family Court and Youth Justice Committee meeting. I could stay a little longer and be there for CREST too, but whatever council would like.
Looking again to council for a recommendation. Councillor Martin.
Thank you. I have a long preamble before I make my recommendation. Okay, it's not that long. Normally, I actually believe that it's more appropriate that Councillor Logan's there because he actually understands. Not that Councillor Day wouldn't, but understands it because it works the day to day. But I'm also aware that once Councillor Logan has declared a conflict of interest, we need to get a lawyer's letter that will say that he's no longer in a conflict, correct? Because that's what we had to do with West Shore Park and Rec.
That's correct.
Yeah. So I would say just because of time that I would be recommending that Councillor Day be the appointment this year. But I would also say that perhaps we could, moving forward, we could perhaps get that lawyer's opinion, making sure that Councillor Logan is not in a conflict moving forward. But I don't know if I need to make that as a I'm just making that as a suggestion, but I'll keep the motion, just Councillor Day.
Sorry, just a point of clarification then. And in terms of proxy, would a lawyer's opinion be needed if council decided to appoint me as the proxy, so to speak? Does that circumvent the process?
Your Worship, I believe no. It doesn't require a legal opinion. The proxy basically is essentially waiving our independence by providing authority to the board to represent us.
So there would be no requirement. It doesn't interfere. We have a motion on the floor and seconded. So any further discussion on that one? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Councillor Day, you have been appointed. Moving then into 7.3.2, West Shore Parks and Rec Annual General Meeting, appoint a member representative. And we know we have a date change on this one, so, which I think has already been changed in the report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is for the West Shore Parks and Recreation Society, which is going to be holding its annual general meeting on June the 22nd at the Juan de Fuca Library Meeting Room. In this particular case, it's a little bit different than the Crest one. We are looking for council to designate a single representative to vote on behalf of the city at the annual general meeting. A director cannot vote at the AGM unless they've been specifically delegated to be the member representative. Again, we've talked about this. A board's director's fiduciary responsibility is to represent the interests of the board and not of the city. So we are looking to council to appoint an elected official who's not a member of the board. I know this gets really confusing. We did just talk about the Crest appointment and we talked about proxies. At one time, the Constitution and bylaws for West Shore Parks and Recreation allowed for a proxy vote. That was removed through a special resolution that was passed and carried by the membership and through the Society Act. So the ability to have a proxy at the West Shore vote is not an option for us. So tonight we're looking for council to consider the appointment of the mayor or another member of city council, excluding the two board directors, Councillor Lil Ho Chong and Councillor Rob Martin, to be the City of Colwood's representative to act for and vote on behalf of the city at the West Shore Parks and Recreation Society's 2017 annual general meeting on June the 22nd.
Any comments from council? Councillor Day?
Just wondering, is there any conflict for you, Madam Mayor, in attending the June 22nd AGM?
For me, no.
No?
I'm there anyways.
So I would move that Mayor Hamilton be our appointed representative for West Shore Parks and Rec.
Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
I want to change subjects, because there's more.
Sorry? You want?
Sorry, may I just discuss?
You can discuss, certainly.
So part of what the this also asked for was agenda items to be, and I have two suggestions that council or Colwood should put forward. One is regarding a budget for the skateboard park moving forward, because there is not one, and the owners do need to decide if they are going to have a budget. Also, Langford has continually messaged that they are not happy with the owner's agreement. There was supposed to be dialogue happening throughout the year. It really hasn't, and I think it needs to be brought up back at the owner's agreement, or excuse me, at the owner's AGM. Mm-hmm. So I would make the suggestion that those two topics be added.
Councillor Day?
So just a question, because I haven't looked carefully at it for a while, but is the skateboard park not included in the 5-year capital plan?
No, it is not. Well, yes and no. It is, but Langford has not voted in favor of the budget. So what has happened is the budget does not have the skateboard park in it because it had to revert to the previous year's budget because this year's budget was never passed by Langford. So in theory, yes, it's in the 5-year plan, but it was never approved, so it got out of the 5-year plan.
Answer good. Just want to. My battery's trying to die on me here. For your topics there, I know that on 2 occasions we've called for a owners group meeting, and in neither case, the only 2 submissions or participants were View Royal and Colwood. Yep. So we keep trying. Yeah. We keep trying. And there is something, again, being slated in the next couple of weeks. We'll give it another go. All right. With that, moving on to transport.
Sorry, may I just get clarification? Do you need it as a motion to have those 2 added, or
I don't think
because it has to be from council, right?
We should.
It can't just be from me.
I'll
make that. Yeah, I'll make that motion on those 2.
A seconder, please. Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Transportation Public Infrastructure 7.4.1 Development Permit DVP 16022 Brooks School Establishment of a flood control level for 1939 and 1946 Souk Road.
Hello, and thank you very much. So as part of the development of lands located at 1939 and 1945 Souk Road, the development permit 16-022, the development and the developer's engineer, Islander Engineering, has requested that council consider a revised flood construction level in regards to the development of the lands. Council consideration is necessary as part of Section 524 of the Local Government Act. So Islander Engineering has reviewed the existing studies and the present land use bylaws, and they've also applied a factor for climate change going forward. So the engineer of record states that the elevating the underside of the floor structure 3 meters, which is the present requirement, from the natural boundary is not warranted, and that a more reasonable alternative would be to elevate the underside of the floor 2.2 meters as opposed to 3. So that establishes a flood control elevation of 61.47 meters as opposed to 67 or 62.27 meters. So the options are that staff recommend the acceptance of the technical memorandum from Islander Engineering to establish the flood control level for the lands located at 1939 and 1945 Souk Road with the following recommendations. That the flood control elevation for the lands adjacent to Colwood Creek Basin, located at 1939 and 1945 Souk Road, be established at 59.27 meters, and that the flood control level for the lands adjacent to Colwood Creek Basin, located at 1939 and 1945 Souk Road, be set at 61.47 meters, which is an increase of 2.2 meters above the present flood elevation established by Islander Engineering. The option is to frankly not accept that recommendation of Islander Engineering. And in doing so, we could either be directed to obtain another recommendation or establish it at the same 3-meter benchmark, which is presently required in the Local Government Act.
I'll move the staff recommendation, Your Worship.
Seconder. Discussion, Councillor Day?
I just wanted to confirm publicly that there would be no risk to other buildings nearby as a result of this flood level acceptance.
There would be, as far as I'm aware, no risk to buildings nearby. These are the first buildings to be built presently on lands that's sitting relatively vacant. Downstream would be subject to further review and further consideration. This variance is for this property only in regards to floodplain elevation.
So it wouldn't affect any future, so say another property came in and they wouldn't be able to say, oh, you accepted 2.2 meters for this property. They would have to get their own independent engineering review for a subsequent development.
I believe that due to a resolution, that another party could research that resolution and bring it forward as a leading example. However, they would have to establish their own review, and it would come forward just in the same manner that this has.
Great, thank you. Councillor Martin.
Thank you. I'm just wondering why, or what the hurry is, why this came straight to council and did not go through TPI.
I wish I could answer that. It was brought forward, and I understand the project has had several delays and is sitting forward for a timeline of opening, and that's measured things backwards. Perhaps the Director of Planning can address that further if he has any more information.
Not much to add to that, other than it is specified by the Local Government Act as being a decision of council, and it's a pretty simple, technical task that we have before us in terms of setting that elevation. So staff felt it was appropriate to forward it directly to council, particularly because of the timing constraints that the developer is under.
Further questions? Good. Any others? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Moving into bylaw section number 8, 8.1, bylaw number 1673 for final reading, 5-year financial plan.
Move final.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Bylaw number 1674 for final reading, tax rate bylaw number 1674, 2017.
Move final.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Bylaw number 1675, final reading for Colwood Sewer Utility Bylaw number 1500, 2001 or 2011, pardon me, amendment number 5. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Bylaw number 1671, final reading, Colwood, Maine, Sewer Local Area Service Bylaw, Establishment and Loan Authorization number 598, 2001, amendment number 54.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. 8.5, bylaw number 1672, final reading for Colwood Central, Sewer Local Area Service Establishment and Loan Authorization, bylaw number 480, 1999.
Move final.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Item 8.6, bylaw number 1679, first, second, and third readings. Colwood, Maine Sewer Local Area Service Bylaw Establishment and Loan Authorization number 598, 2001 for 3331 Wishart.
Move introduction.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
Move second.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Final bylaw before us, 8.7, bylaw number 1680, first, second, and third readings. Colwood West Sewer Local Area Service Establishment and Loan Authorization, bylaw number 625, 2001, amendment number 42 for 3331 Wishart Road. That would be Wishart Road, not Rod. Geez. I'm looking at it going like, yeah, that's not right. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
Move second.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. We've concluded in camera and we've made our rise and report for the members on ABC. Looking for adjournment.
Move adjournment.
All those in favor?